Thanks, Deputy Premier. Yes, I do. I think it'll definitely be this year. Obviously, we have to carry on in the good trajectory that we've had in recent weeks. But that being said, if we're either driving numbers down, even better, and we've got a 0 day today, but if there are weeks of 0, then there's no question that indoor sport will come back, not just for kids but for adults as well, and it'll progressively go from outdoors to indoors and from non-contact to full contact and across the board for age groups. So we're on the right path, and I'm confident it'll happen this year.
Why does it need to be 0 for so long? What are the dangers of having it now?
Well, certainly indoors is a greater risk. We know that transmission between kids can be less and therefore not so much concern about the risk of transmission for kids. And closer contact sport is a greater risk of transmission. We don't want any transmission to occur in Victoria through things that can be deferred for a little bit, but we want them to come back as soon as is reasonable, and I think we're not far off. We've flagged it in broad terms with the roadmap, but we'll make that review as we've always made to see how we're tracking against those roadmap milestones, but we're on track for those, absolutely. Oh, certainly there are still some challenges with hospitality. I said yesterday people should vote with their feet. If they're going to a hospitality setting that they're not comfortable with, either in terms of how the distancing is occurring or the hygiene measures or the check-in, whether it be a QR code or a registration book with names and details, people should go to a place that they feel comfortable and they feel safe. I would say to all of those settings, all of those businesses, do the right thing by your customers by having all of those COVID-safe principles absolutely implemented and in place. And as a customer, you should ask and you should question if you're not seeing that happen. If you can't find the book where you record your name and details, ask for it. If you're seeing a waiter or waitress without a mask, demand it, because it's for your safety that those things are in place. So it is a case of calling industry up to the standards that we're setting, but I think overwhelmingly people are doing the right thing, and very, very many businesses are doing the right thing. There are a few out there that are not. There's obviously a lot of demand at the moment. There are a lot of people who are knocking on those businesses to enjoy the things that we all enjoy, but they need to keep in mind that it's all with a question of safety so that we can do all of the things that we've gotten to at this point. Yeah, I think so. I think we'll see. I think we'll be down to a couple of dozen active cases by next week. So I think you'll see, 10 or more come off each day, and we'll get down to very few active cases. They obviously have to go through a check-in process for each and every individual, and if they've got persistent symptoms, then they might need the PCR test to be fully cleared. For most other people, if they're symptom-free for 3 days and they've gone at least 10 days, then they can be cleared. There are a few in the system also that are historical cases that we need to be able to check in and make sure that they're also cleared by virtue of making that phone call and being in touch.
Are you happy with the testing numbers that we're still seeing?
Testing numbers are terrific, best in country. Really important for us to know what's going on, really important for us to be happy that the 0 that we see today is a true 0, that there aren't chains of transmission out there that we're not detecting. But 15,000 is absolutely excellent after such a long time with such high levels of testing. But it's fantastic to see.
Is that 1 November 8?
Sorry?
All on track for November 8?
All on track for November 8.
Are we on track to come even sooner than the 8th or the 9th?
No, I don't think so. I think we're working through the details for November 8. What allowances come on November 8 will absolutely be informed by what this week looks like, and so some of the details might change. But November 8 will be the date of that new refresh of public health directions. Won't happen sooner. Well, I think we can always make consideration of what the caps might be in certain settings, what the density quotients might be in those settings, and some of the specific industries that might come on board in terms of being able to operate.
So restaurants, restaurants, cafes, the density numbers should be loosened even more?
Maybe not for hospitality, but look, it's all on the board. We'll talk through each and every setting in detail But, you know, there are lots and lots of industries, lots and lots of sectors to consider in that space.
Do you have a target where you might see that there will be active cases or testing levels or transmission levels where it might come to a point where masks aren't considered to be that effective or needed?
Yeah, clearly if there's no transmission at all, masks are not a requirement. What we shouldn't be complacent about is thinking that if we've got a few days with no cases, that there's never a requirement for masks. Country Victoria went for a few weeks with 0 cases, but all the people of Shepparton, I'm sure, were very happy that they were wearing masks at the time that there were 3 active cases out in the community for over a week before we understood that they were active cases. So masks are important for those potential transmission events when we don't know that there's something out there. But clearly we should be transitioning, and we will be transitioning from universal mask wearing to maybe indoors only, to maybe just high-risk settings at the appropriate time. But masks are, again, a small impost for the individual, for us collectively, to get us to the freedoms that we're all looking for and beginning to enjoy. You know, the irony of protests yesterday is that they were protesting the very things that have got us to this point in time, the very things that are allowing us to have the freedoms that we want and that we're winning. And so it's madness to give up on some of these small imposts when they're exactly the thing that are getting us these 0 days and are getting us to the summer that we want and the summer that we should have.
How long would you need to see 0 days of 0 transmissions, regional and metro, before we can take off the mask?
Look, it's not entirely clear. We've got a roadmap where we've talked about the last step coming with 14 days of no new cases. That would be a significant achievement. It is absolutely not impossible, and we're on track for that. We're on track for that in November. That would be great. 28 days of no cases and no active cases we've talked about as the COVID normal step. So that's also within reach. And we'd make decisions about masks for those thresholds as well.
One of the things that masks generally are perhaps becoming less effective now than they were, say, a few weeks ago, because people are going out, taking them off, eating at restaurants, some people are perhaps dropping their guard in other settings.
Certainly masks are only as useful and as effective as being used properly. With less transmission, yeah, they're stopping fewer cases. There are fewer cases out there. But for any infected individual, if both individuals are wearing a mask, the person who's infected and the person who's close to them, that reduces the transmission by 50% or more. So in terms of the effectiveness for that particular transmission event, they're as effective as they've always been. But do they have as much utility as we drive cases right down? No, because there are such few cases. But the importance of stopping each and every one of those cases becomes super critical, because we're moving to a place where we can see 0 transmission. That would be fantastic. That's not necessarily the end game here, because we don't know if we can reach that, but masks are playing a critical role in that space. Certainly we've got outbreak responses that are fantastically formulated now. It's identifying those cases quickly, it's getting to their close contacts essentially within 24 hours from time of getting that swab. That is a super fast response, and then going to those primary contacts and those secondary close contacts and having all of those individuals in quarantine, having all of them tested, and having that slow release from quarantine based on testing and based on doing the 14 days for the primary contacts. That would be an outbreak response. It's what we've done in Kilmore and Shepparton. It's what we've done in the northern suburbs. It's exactly what we do if we see it spring up. But it would be on top of a real call for testing right within those networks, right within the geographic area where we see that happening.
Is it possible though that like a summer like Lawn or holiday stuff like that would effectively be kind of shut down if there was an outbreak there?
I don't think it's a shutdown in the sense that you need to stop businesses operating closed down settings, because if you can identify the individuals, all of the close contacts, all of the secondary close contacts, then the businesses can continue to operate, people can continue to move around if you haven't been identified within that circle multiple circles of contacts. I think that's the essence of giving Melbourne, the whole of Victoria, those freedoms, is that you can absolutely focus on those most at risk of developing illness and manage it through those means.
Given how successful Victoria has been, has any country from overseas come asking for assistance or guidance from you? Or
They have. I've spoken to some public health experts in Republic of Ireland. I'm on a call to the health minister there early next week. They've obviously gone into a Melbourne type of model, but I think they want to understand, what the challenges were, what the benefits are, what some of the considerations need to be. They've got different challenges. They've got an open border that's locked in through a Good Friday agreement with Northern Ireland, so they've got different challenges. They're part of the EU. But I think they're looking very much to the successes that we've enjoyed and any lessons that we might have out of it.
and it might be a question for James, but on the border, has there been any progress with New South Wales?
With the zero new cases again today, doesn't mean there are not more cases out there just undetected, people not getting tested. Do you have some sort of theory on how many cases are bubbling along in the suburbs that we just don't know about right now?
We really can't say. We don't know who might not come forward for testing. I think it's encouraging that with the blitz that we've had in the northern suburbs and the responses that we've had in Deer Park and all these other local government areas where we've said please come forward for testing, that we're not turning up additional cases. So the fact that we're targeting these hotspot areas where transmission might be occurring and not seeing anything outside of that close contact group is really encouraging. Of course, there could be transmission out there and mild illness and people aren't coming forward. We do know that 1 in 5 individuals need to get hospitalised with coronavirus. Emergency departments, ICU beds, they'll all be testing anyone with compatible symptoms. If they aren't seeing cases, that's another level of assurance that there isn't undetected transmission out there. But you do need that 14 days, 28 days to give really high level confidence. But at the moment, it's a good sign.
You reckon there are none? I mean, I know it's guesswork. You think there's no more that they're not detecting?
I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say that there's no more. There's every possibility that a cohort of the population who maybe are not so engaged in testing, who may not be engaged in primary care, or who may not access health services more generally, might have low levels of transmission that are going to 1 or 2 individuals. So a small, slow but steady chain of transmission. That's why we have to continue to watch, continue really robust surveillance, and continue to encourage everyone to test.
I've been to a stack of restaurants over the past couple of days for work. It seems to me that people sit down, take their mask off before they've even ordered. Sitting there and they're chatting, no food or drink even on the table yet. Is that the wrong thing to be doing?
Well, I'd certainly ask people to keep their masks on until they get food. They don't need to be putting it back on and taking it off between spoonfuls or whatever, but keep it on until you've got your food served. Put it back on when you've finished. That's the safest thing to do. Look, you might be out with your own housemates, that's less of a risk clearly, but if you're seeing someone for the first time or you're seeing someone you don't normally socialise with, then it's the safe thing to do.
No hugging?
Look, it's really up to those individuals. Again, if you have met up with a household that you haven't met up with previously and you've been seeing them regularly over the course of the week, then it's not going to be a significantly greater risk. They've been exposed, if you like. That's for an individual's choice. I think you should always bear in mind that you can have the coronavirus infection without symptoms. You can be infectious without symptoms. And vulnerable people are called vulnerable for a reason. They get severe illness, and no one wants to transmit to someone who's vulnerable and who could develop really significant disease.
What about what people could do if they go into a restaurant and see that there's like thing and they could approach the owner, maybe the staff or whatever. Is there someone other than the police that they can call? Could there be like an external number that people can report these?
There is a 1300 number that I'm aware of. I haven't got it offhand, but please go to the coronavirus website, DHHS or VicGov website, and those details are there. You can call WorkSafe if you think there's an OC health and safety issue as an employee, and of course you can call the VicPol hotline in that regard if you're really making a complaint about unsafe practices.
Can I just ask, I know you're not the chief medical officer, but the AMA is really unhappy with the way hospitals
Look, I'm genuinely not directly involved in the way that the Chief Medical Officer is, Prof Andrew Wilson. I do know that there's been a huge amount of work through the Healthcare Worker Wellbeing Program. It's engaged very broadly. The AMA are represented, the RACGP are represented. They're very happy with the body of work that's progressing. You can't do everything instantaneously, and I understand that there's a lot to work through for a respiratory program. We're absolutely giving encouragement. We're developing all of the policies around that, and I know that they're meeting on a regular basis to progress that. But what each and every health setting does, I'm not sure. I know that Prof Wilson is pushing for that to roll out as fulsomely as possible. Thank you.
Is it a donut or a bagel?
Oh, look, if you're a public health person, it's probably a bagel. But if people want to indulge in a donut, who am I to stand in their way? I've said many times we deserve to enjoy some of these hard-won gains. This is a precious place that we've gotten to. We need to hang on to it really tightly, but we should also indulge a little bit in the sunshine when it's out and in the outdoors and in seeing people. It's a really good vibe at the moment.
Are you surprised to see so many of the donut fans?
No, I think we always aimed for this. You know, there were critiques of the supercomputer modelling, there were critiques of the modelling, there was a lot of cynicism about the targets that we had laid out. We knew it was a hard haul. We knew that it needed to be a really long period of time before we got to this stage. And we knew that would be exhausting and damaging in lots of ways for all of the things that a lockdown brings. But we also knew what would be on the other side of it. And, I would ask anyone the question, what would your plan have been otherwise? Because what Europe is going through now is a consequence of not being able to get to this point where you can stay on top of very low numbers indefinitely. That's what we're aiming for. That's what I'm confident that we can do. If you don't get to that point, it all comes back in a tsunami. And to see 50,000 cases a day in France, to see Belgium sending patients outside of the country because they're so overwhelmed, that's what we might have faced if we hadn't been able to get on top of it. We would never have been asking the question about opening up borders to South Australia and New South Wales, travel bubbles with Western Pacific as well as New Zealand. We would have never even got to contemplate that without getting to this point. So I'm very happy we've pursued it. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Karen.